Hello and welcome to Mind, Body, Sleep, the podcast for anyone out there who wants to understand and recover from insomnia using a holistic perspective. I'm Beth Kendall, your host. Let's get started. Hello and welcome to this special episode of the podcast because I am having my very first guest today, and it's not just any guest. This person is a close personal friend. She is a fellow sleep coach and just all around incredible person. Welcome, Michelle Weil.
Thank you so much for having me today. I'm really excited to be here.
Oh, I'm so glad you're here. All right. So I know that the listeners would love to know a little bit more about you. You went through your own struggle with insomnia, and I know there's no such thing as a short insomnia story, but tell us what that was like and what you're all about, and maybe let everyone know how we came up with today's topic.
Sure. So I had insomnia for 5 years before I was able to find the right help and recover. But I think I was like so many people out there struggling with this. I really thought I had a physical problem, something deeply wrong with me. And I spent years chasing my symptoms around in circles endlessly. Everything from hormones to gut health, brain health. I feel like I really did do it all. And it didn't occur to me at the time that insomnia could in any way be driven by what was going on in my mind and my brain, and how this was so connected to the symptoms that I could be feeling in my body. I knew I was, really anxious, really panicked a lot of the time, but I didn't understand the role of my beliefs and my own reactivity in driving the whole insomnia cycle. So it took a little while for me to kind of figure things out. But once I understood this a lot better, that really started my own journey to recover from years of struggling with my sleep intensely. So that's a little bit about what this looked like. And I think we were talking a little bit about some potential topics for today. And as we both know, going through insomnia it's really hard. It's often such a difficult thing to experience for anyone. Mm-hmm. And we were thinking of some of the lighter sides, actually, not necessarily in the moment, but looking back. And we were talking about some of the things that we did during our insomnia that now makes us laugh. Mm-hmm. And we thought, what if we talked about some of that and sort of brought up some of the lighter sides or some of the things that maybe they aren't that funny in the moment. Maybe they are actually in some cases, but that there can be this other side where you can look back and even laugh at certain things. That's possible. So I think that's how we landed on today.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. And I love this idea so much. And in fact, I've mentioned this to a couple of my clients that I'm doing this podcast on some of the, craziest things we did when we were in it. And, they've offered me some of the things that they've done. And I mean, I've heard some that I've never heard of before. So I think a lot of people will be able to relate to this really well. Okay, so I'm going to let you go first, Michelle. And we want to follow this up, right, with some silver linings. We're going to follow this up today with some of the silver linings of insomnia, which have been many as well. So, all right, lay it on us. What do you got?
Hey, no pressure. Yeah, absolutely. And I would be so curious to hear other people's experiences, your listeners. So I hope they write you and let you know, because I'm sure we all have so many of these types of stories.
Oh.
And the first one that really came to mind, and I don't know if anybody listening is a Seinfeld fan or used to watch Seinfeld, but there's all these episodes where one of the characters, George, used to sleep under his desk at work, and he used to even get up in the first thing in the morning and say something like, his nap at work was the only thing that could get him out of bed in the morning. And anyway, so he was known to be sleeping under his desk at work. And I had this period of time where I had this stretch where I was, sleeping very little. I was really, really tired. I was, working full time. I was actually functioning very well, but I was really tired on this particular day. And I had this office space that had, glass windows for the most part or glass. So it was clear. And I had one of those big kind of wraparound desks with a closed bottom, and lunchtime had rolled around and I was so exhausted. And really all I wanted to do was rest for an hour, close my eyes, maybe meditate. And the idea of sitting on the floor with like a hard surface against my back felt grounding. I sometimes do this at home, and I thought, oh, and it would be also private, right? Because nobody would be able to see that I was resting in this way. So I thought, I'm just going to sit on the ground underneath my desk, and I'm going to relax and just close my eyes for just a little bit. That was my plan. We're going to close my eyes. I'm going to meditate on my lunch break. And then I woke up about 7 hours later. I woke up possibly 8.
Everyone's gone.
Yeah. It was
Michelle under the desk.
Just me. I had passed out. I mean, I don't even remember feeling sleepy. I had clearly just completely fallen asleep, and it was pitch dark. And it wasn't even just like the people in my office went home. The whole building had everyone was gone. And I woke up. I was so startled waking up to this. I felt so embarrassed. I kind of slunk out of the building. My husband thought I was working late. He was confused. And really, I slept under my desk for pretty much, a whole day. And I remember
a whole night's
rest. Yep, a whole night's rest.
Yeah.
And I went in the next day, kind of worried, like, did anybody know? Right. And so I went in with this very cautious, observant energy to feel things out. And nobody did. And nobody could see me. I think they just must have thought I had meetings or I went home early. Nobody would have possibly known. And so I felt very cautious and embarrassed for a couple of days after that. But I was basically, I was George. And that was my first thought as I was quickly gathering my things and getting home. I thought, oh my gosh, I've turned into George. I'm George. That's me.
And so did you continue to sleep under the desk for quite some time, or did that become your new sleeping place?
Well, despite how restful it was, unlike George, I chose to not repeat that behavior. So whereas I think George, if I'm remembering correctly, actually engineered a full sleeping space, like a bed and everything under his desk. So I certainly didn't take it that far. But yeah, that was one of the kind of silly moments I had at some point during my insomnia days.
Oh, I can so relate. Yeah. And okay, so should I go next, or do you want?
I think so. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, I was thinking about this, and I almost I actually have bullet points here, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna have to break this into like 2 sections. So the first section were things that I did that I broke it down into the most expensive thing I did and the most time intensive thing I did. And the most expensive thing that I did was this PEMF mat. And PEMF stands for pulsed electromagnetic fields, I think. Mm-hmm. And it's all about the grounding. So when you were like, I just felt really grounding, I was like, yes, I forked out so much money. I can't remember exactly how much it was. I think it was like $4,500 or $4,900. And I just remember thinking I could buy a used car for how much I'm paying for this mat. But like the woman selling it was just like so convinced this was going to help me with my sleep. And I just was like, oh yeah, if I just lay on this mat, this is going to be the thing, I had such high hopes for it. And it was just like such a precarious time with my finances. So you can imagine the hope that was riding on that.
Oh, yeah.
And so I get the mat, and it's, I laid on that thing for hours. I mean, hours and hours and hours. And I don't even know if I felt anything with that mat, but I am like totally into all of these types of things. And I do believe in grounding, on the earth and all of that. But I would lay on that mat for hours, and, it didn't help with my sleep because, of course, it wasn't doing anything to address the fear and anxiety behind not sleeping. But that was for sure the most expensive thing that I did. And then the most time intensive for sure was probably going down the DNA rabbit hole of 23andMe. When that came out, I was like one of the first people to, send my sample in, and I was certain that I was very certain that I had some sort of genetic deficiency in my ability to sleep, and I was going to find it, so I did that and spent hours, probably days or weeks worth, well, probably weeks, if not months, I don't know, a lot of time searching for how my DNA could be impacting this struggle with my sleep. So those were kind of the two things that I did. And then my next category is a little bit different, but I'll let you chime in again, Michelle.
Well, I love those too. And if I could have gotten my hands on a grounding mat, I absolutely would have been right there with you, no matter what the price. And as you were saying that, I thought, yes, but Beth, would the used car have made you feel grounded?
No, it wouldn't. Right? I don't know, but it would have been, it probably would have been practical. It would have gotten me to and fro. But I mean, I was like, I just really did think that laying on that mat for hours and hours just would really help. And I could see where my thinking was at the time. But now that, of course, we know so much more about insomnia.
I know, absolutely. And it makes me think of my time with weighted blankets very similarly. Yes. And I like how you brought up the 23andMe, because I did the same thing. I went down the genetic testing rabbit hole and also spent a lot of time and money doing that. So you and I have that in common, and sort of being convinced that all of this must be driven by some sort of genetic, factor or something to be unearthed. And that can be a very difficult rabbit hole to find yourself in because there's so much complexity. So I have a lot of empathy for that because I went there too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I went there too. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
I know. And I know that I was thinking back, and I also have the same bullet points as well. I thought, let's bullet point this.
Of course you do. Of course you do.
Yeah, of course. And I know that one that I had shared with you, when I look back now and it makes me laugh. Let me provide a bit of context. At the time, I was really afraid of my heart rate, because I had such a high heart rate pretty frequently. And of course, when we are struggling with insomnia, it's really normal to deal with higher levels of hyperarousal, both at night and in the daytime. And higher heart rate can be part of that. But I didn't understand any of this, right? I didn't understand what was driving my high heart rate and keeping it elevated. And so I therefore became really afraid of the fact that I had a high resting heart rate. And when I would stand or walk around or do anything, it would get much higher. So at times I would decide that if I could just be perfectly still all day long, if I could not move an inch for as long as possible during the day, that then I would sleep that night somehow. And so I don't know how I correlated the two, but it was this idea that if I could just be very still and somehow get my heart rate down, that would lead to sleep. And so I did have several days at times where that was my intention. And I would try to be as still as possible and not move. And now looking back, I think, oh my gosh, yes, in the moment it was being driven by fear. So it wasn't funny in the moment, but it makes me laugh a little bit now, especially because it made me so afraid to move. Whereas now I can't imagine having the fear of of movement, when in reality, there was probably so much adrenaline in my body that
moving would have released some of the adrenaline. Exactly.
Correct.
Yes.
You know what? Go for the walk. Go for the walk. Don't be afraid. It's okay.
Oh my goodness. Yes.
Yeah.
I wonder if you were laying still the same time I was laying still on my mat. Probably.
That was my mistake.
We didn't know each other. Yeah, we didn't know each other at the time. Oh my
exactly.
goodness.
That was my mistake. Clearly, was not incorporating the mat.
Yeah.
My routine.
If you had had the stillness. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Oh my goodness. I totally hear you, because I was doing the exact same thing on the mat.
Yep.
But I think like for me, where things really got nutty in my mind was that the beliefs I started creating in my mind. And, I was like George in that I literally started to believe that I could only sleep in these very unusual places. And I got it in my mind that I could only sleep in airport related places. And this would be like on the floor in the gate area behind the podium. This would be like employee airport lounges. And, I thought, this is so strange, because it obviously wasn't a quiet environment. It couldn't have been more light. Like I'm sleeping under these fluorescent lights, but this is where I would actually sleep the hardest. And, it's so perplexing when you're going through it. But I didn't understand was that it wasn't those places or conditions. It was the absence of pressure to sleep that actually allowed me to sleep all of these places. But I was linking it to, well, my brain seems to only be able to sleep in these like airport related environments. And then I would get to these beautiful hotels that we would stay at on these layovers, and I couldn't sleep at all in this gorgeous bed with great pillows. Not a chance, because the pressure was on, the pressure was on to sleep there. So of course I couldn't sleep. So it's like just the beliefs that my mind created. And this also transferred into, oh man, Michelle, I don't think I've ever told you this, but I used to travel a lot with my friend Kelly when I was going through Lyme disease treatment. I would travel every month to go see my doctor, and we would only book hotels in rooms that had a big enough bathroom for me to be able to roll a roller bed in there, or have like a blow up mattress in the bathroom. Like we would call ahead and make sure that they're like they could accommodate me sleeping in the bathroom. And, Kelly could not have been, she was just like, oh, okay, no problem, whatever. And so I would be like in these bathrooms sleeping. And it was like, it was pitch black in these bathrooms and quiet. And I just felt like I need to have this sort of environment, like this sort of like space to myself. I didn't care where it was. Sometimes it was a closet, didn't even matter. But one time I couldn't sleep in one of these bathrooms because it was like a blow up mattress. It was like a fancy blow up mattress. And I'm like telling Kelly, I'm like, I can't sleep. We're going to have to switch. And she's like, she's one of those annoyingly good sleepers that just falls asleep on demand, just like,
how dare she?
I don't get it. And she's like, all right, I'll sleep in there. So she goes in there, and I go into the bedroom, and I wake up the next morning and I go in the bathroom, and Kelly, the mattress had deflated to the point where she was completely on the ground with like an inch of air left in the mattress, and her head was like in the shower stall, and she was still sleeping. She's like sleeping right through that. And, I was just like, it was always good that she was such a good sleeper, because I was just such not, and it somehow worked out. But, it was very interesting, the beliefs that I created around my sleep.
Oh, absolutely. And what a good friend as well to roll with all of that
Just
and just be like, absolutely sure, this makes sense.
yeah, just no biggie,
No
I'll just
biggie.
I'll sleep in the shower stall. That's no
Yeah.
problem.
Oh, that's a
Yeah.
friend right there for
Yeah, for
sure.
sure, for
But
sure.
I get that. I think it's impossible not to develop so many different beliefs. I had the opposite belief where I believed I could only sleep with the utmost perfect tranquility, the
Hmm.
absolute most perfect circumstances, which ironically, even though I created those for myself often, I still did not sleep, but I still believed that.
Hmm.
Despite sleeping under the desk, you think that would have been a bit of a clue. The one moment where I'm trying not to sleep, where it's uncomfortable for sleep and it's happening. But no, my bedroom was the most tranquil, perfect sleep environment you could possibly imagine. And also scientifically, Beth, because I took great care to make sure that it was completely dark. There were no signs of light from clocks, not even the
Yeah.
smallest kind of light. And I remember hearing somewhere once that if you could at night in your bed raise your hand above your face, about a foot away from your face, if you could see it, it wasn't dark enough. And I thought that makes sense. So I painstakingly did whatever I needed to do to create this like a cold, dark cave, with all the lavender oil in the world, which by the way, I hate the smell of lavender oil, but I used to basically bathe in lavender oil thinking that would be it. This is the thing. And even though it actually stressed me out and made me feel nauseous, I would just be like, we need more of that because that's what's going to create the perfect environment. So my beliefs were in the opposite direction. I needed to make things as perfect as humanly possible in order to sleep. And it still didn't happen, but I still had that belief because the moment something was off, or if heaven forbid, a little shining of light entered my room, I would be like, that's it. Game over. A beam of sunshine on my
Yep.
leg. Game
Yep.
over. That's it. That's
Yep.
it for the rest of the next week, probably. That's
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yes. I so hear you. I was just talking with someone about this right before our call here and how all of the info out there, like, Huberman, and which I love Huberman.
Same.
I mean, there's so much I love about him, but just how much fragility they're creating around our sleep systems, that we're just like creating this, like we're so fragile and we've got to do like all of this, and really we're so resilient. And when you think about, 500 years ago or whenever, like people were not doing any of this stuff. Like they just like, well, just sleep on the ground here, I guess, and here we are. Like, I think I read that exact same piece of advice about seeing your hand. If you can see your hand, then it's not dark enough. And then getting really freaked out if there was any kind of light coming in. So totally with you. Yeah.
And I remember first reading that and testing it and being able to see the outline of my hand and going, well, my God, no wonder this is happening to me.
Yes, exactly. And thinking that was it. Like that was the reason.
That's it. If I can just fix this.
Yes. Oh, man.
And for me as well, I mean, the irony is that having a completely pitch dark environment felt unsettling, like to be in complete darkness at that level. But I ignored that. I thought, well, no, this is the way. This is science. And
this is what I have to do. Yeah. This is what I have to do.
This is what I have to do.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. It does. While a lot of that stuff can sound really interesting and like you, I'm a fan of Huberman too, but I do agree that it really makes people feel like they can't trust themselves, their bodies, that there is no innate ability to sleep and be okay. It's really that I have to control everything that's going on in my environment and I have to control my body as much as possible. And then maybe I'll have a chance. And so it just creates so much more stress and pressure. And again, the loss of that trust where there's no more trust. It's just replaced with fear and control and pressure to get it right. Because if you can see the beam of light, right, that's it. It's over.
Oh, yeah. So well said. You just said that so beautifully. And I know that we see this so similarly. And how, what happens, I think, while all of that information out there is very well intentioned, is it starts putting conscious effort into an unconsciously effortless process. You know what I mean? Like it just like changes this very natural thing and simple thing of sleep into something really complicated, something that naturally happens towards something we need to do. And, I think like a lot of like the biohacking community and very health conscious individuals, which I know both of us were in the nutritional therapy space prior to becoming sleep coaches. And I mean, it's just so easy to fall into that, because when you do want to take care of your health and, your physical life and all of these things, and that's all the information out there, it's easy to see why people grab onto it.
Oh, absolutely. And it can even be a really helpful approach for other things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think that's what's so confusing is, somebody could have had a really positive experience with that approach in another area of life. And then they just want to reapply it in this area and it suddenly backfires and that feels confusing and scary. And I completely understand that because that was very much my approach for years on end. No stone left unturned.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm going to find everything out there that could possibly be causing this.
Absolutely, including my own DNA and physiology. And what am I not metabolizing correctly? Because clearly that's the thing.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. So I think it's good that we can laugh about it now.
Yeah. And definitely, there have been silver linings in this experience of insomnia. And I know for anyone out there going, really in it right now, it's hard to believe that could be true, but it really is. And I think, Michelle, you would probably agree that we know so many people now that can feel that, so it's just to give you some hope. And Michelle, like, what were some of the silver linings that you've had from the experience?
Oh, well, there were actually so many. And every time I think about this, I do uncover a couple of new ones as I go along. But I think for me, the whole experience of insomnia and going through insomnia recovery was a broader invitation for me to look at not just sleep and how I was showing up and relating to sleep, but how I was actually relating and approaching so many parts of my life. And it really allowed me to see that I was very fear-based in so many areas. And I really hadn't seen that before. And so kind of just having that broadened perspective. And I really did feel like recovering from insomnia was this broader invitation to do, I guess, this deeper internal work that we often end up doing with ourselves when we're going through something like this. So that was one thing that came to mind, was just this idea that recovering from insomnia often has a global impact on the rest of your life, because fundamentally you're turning inwards and you're doing internal work, with yourself, and it almost has to have a broader impact. So I think that's one that comes to mind. How about you?
Oh, yeah, I just enjoy the way you said that so much. So there's so many silver linings, but I think that, the big one that's sort of at the forefront right now is that it brought me to this career and, helping others through something in a way that I really wish that I would have had when I was going through it. And I think it's so exciting to be a part of a community doing this work, because I really do feel that we are on the leading edge of how to think about insomnia and how to help people with it. And then, of course, I never would have met you, and I absolutely treasure our friendship so much. And I think also the silver lining for me with insomnia was that it taught me the power of my own mind and how it's never the thing. It's always the meaning that we assign to the thing that creates how we experience it. And insomnia for me really showed me that. It really showed me that, and that we have this beautiful ability to direct and focus our mind in intentional ways. And I think when you were talking about the global impact of us and our experience, I think that insomnia was also a messenger.
Yeah.
It's like the messenger for me, the message was, where is the pressure in your life? Where can you let go? Like it for me is a condition of pressure. And that there's areas somewhere in my life that I'm putting a lot of pressure on myself, and where can I let that go? And then I see that, and I'm sure you do too, in our coaching practices, where when people can get stuck, a lot of times there's some pressure being put on the process in some way or on ourselves. So, and also, what, Michelle, it really for me was kind of a spiritual experience. It brought me to levels of awareness I don't think I would have considered without going through it. So, yeah.
I would agree. I think everything you said, I was nodding along because I feel exactly the same way. It shifted so much for me. Of course, both of us becoming sleep coaches and working in this space. And, for me, really understanding the mind-body connection, self-directed neuroplasticity, all of this kind of came along with this whole experience. And very similarly to what you just shared, I also felt like it was a spiritual experience, and there was so much growth involved on so many levels, and more aware coming out of this experience with deeper levels of awareness and connection, has been really a special part of the experience. And it can be hard to see that when you're in it. So I understand that sometimes people can hear that and think, well, how could that possibly be? This is such a difficult thing. And I think it's often those really difficult experiences that can lead us to the most growth if we allow it. And so, and I see that all the time with the clients that I work with. So there's that element of that as well, for sure.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I can't thank you enough for being my first guest today. I think that people will get a lot out of this. And tell us where everyone can find you. And y'all, her website name represents her completely. So Michelle, just tell us where they can find you.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me as your first guest. I am so honored to have been your first guest. I was so excited about this. And so my business is called The Hopeful Mind, and you can find me at hopefulmind.com.
Amazing. Amazing. All right. Well, that's all for now, folks. Thanks so much for being here. This is the Mind, Body, Sleep podcast. I'm Beth Kendall, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for being here today. If you love what you heard on today's episode, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the podcast. And if you need more support with your sleep, join me in the Mind, Body, Sleep Mentorship. This 3-month one-on-one program will transform your relationship with sleep so you can get back to living the life that you love, free from the fear of not sleeping. Head on over to bethkendall.com for more details. I'll see you next time.